Welcome to Histology. Thor, Old Norse, Thor, is the famed Norse god of thunder, lightning, and the sky. He is the son of Odin, the chief of the gods, and his mother is Jord, the earth goddess, a giantess. Thor is married to the golden-haired goddess Sif, and they have a son named Modi and a daughter named Thrud. Thor also has another son, Magni, born to the giantess Jarnsaxa. As the son of Odin and an earth giantess, Thor has both Aesir god blood and Jotun, giant blood, in his veins. From a young age, he grew into a towering, strong god who protected both the realm of the gods and the world of humans with fierce loyalty. Thor is often described as a huge, powerful man with red hair and a bushy beard. He is a beloved champion of Asgard and a defender of Midgard. In Norse tales, it is said that Thor is the strongest of all the gods and men. This strength made him the gods' greatest warrior and the first line of defense against the giants, who were often enemies of the gods. Thor's temper could be quick, and he loved a good fight, but he was also good-hearted, using his power to protect his family and humanity from evil. The roar of thunder in the sky was said to be the sound of Thor riding into battle. Thor's mighty weapons and treasures are legendary. His most famous possession is his hammer Mjolnir, a magical hammer forged by dwarves that could level mountains. Thor uses Mjolnir to crush giants and monsters, and it always returns to his hand like a boomerang after he throws it. To wield Mjolnir, Thor wears a pair of iron gloves called Jarngriper that let him grip the hammer's handle. He also owns a belt named Meggingjord that doubles his strength whenever he wears it, making the already mighty Thor even stronger. Thor's chariot is pulled by two large goats, Tangrisnir, Toothgnasher, and Tangnjoster, Snarltooth. These magical goats can be slaughtered and eaten for food, and Thor can revive them the next day with his powers, as long as none of their bones are broken. When Thor rides across the sky in his goat-drawn chariot, the rumbling of the wheels sounds like thunder to those below. Thor's home is in the realm of Thrudvangur, the Plains of Strength. There he built a great hall called Bilskirnir, which has 540 rooms, making it the largest house in Asgard. Thor lives in Bilskirnir with Sif and his children. He would often burst out of his hall in his chariot to go on adventures or answer cries for help. Thor's daily life was filled with battling giants, protecting the other gods, and ensuring the worlds remained safe. He was not a god of elegance or cunning. He was a straightforward warrior who solved problems with his incredible strength and courage. Many stories are told of Thor's adventures among gods and giants. In most of these myths, Thor confronts a giant or a monstrous creature, proving his bravery. One famous tale is Thor's journey to the land of the giants. Thor, accompanied by Loki, the trickster god, and his occasional travel companion, and a young human servant named Thjalfi, ventured into Jotunheim, the land of giants. They arrived at the castle of Utgarda-Loki, a powerful giant king who enjoyed tricking visitors. Utgarda-Loki greeted them but scoffed at Thor's group, saying they must prove themselves through a series of challenges before he would host them. Thor agreed to the challenge, not knowing the giant king planned to use magic to cheat. First, Thor was asked to drink from a large horn. Thor raised the horn to his lips and drank as much as he could, but no matter how he drank, he could not empty it. He only managed to lower the level a little before stopping, gasping for air. Next, Thor was challenged to lift what appeared to be a heavy gray cat. Thor wrapped his arms around the cat's belly and heaved with all his might. The cat yowled and stretched, but Thor could only lift one of its paws off the ground. For the final test, the giant king told Thor to wrestle an old woman named Ellie, who was surprisingly sturdy. Thor grappled with the old woman in a fierce struggle, but to his shock he could not throw her down. In fact, Thor was forced down to one knee in defeat. Ashamed that he had lost these contests, Thor stayed the night in the giant's hall, puzzled by how he had been outdone. The next morning, as Thor and his companions prepared to leave, Utgarda-Loki revealed the truth. None of those challenges had been what they seemed. The horn Thor tried to drink from was secretly connected to the ocean, so no one could ever drain it. Yet Thor drank so much that he lowered the ocean level and created the tides. The gray cat was actually the Midgard serpent Jormungandr in disguise. Thor had managed to lift the serpent's paw off the ocean floor, an incredible feat that terrified the giants. The old woman Thor wrestled was old age, Ellie, something no one can ever beat, yet Thor had nearly won before falling to one knee. Utgarda-Loki admitted he was astonished by Thor's strength and that the gods had proven themselves after all. Upon hearing how he had been tricked with illusions, Thor was furious. He raised Mjolnir to smash the giant king for his deception, but Utgarda-Loki vanished along with his castle, leaving Thor standing angry and alone on an empty plain. Though Thor was angry, he didn't get to truly defeat the giant. Tales of this adventure spread, and everyone realized just how powerful Thor really was. Another popular myth about Thor shows his cleverness and humor. In the Lay of Thrym, Thor's mighty hammer Mjolnir was stolen by a greedy giant. Thor woke up one morning to find that Mjolnir was gone. He shouted to Loki, "My hammer has been stolen. No one in heaven or on earth can know what a loss this is for me." Thor knew he had to get his weapon back at any cost. Loki went to the land of the giants and discovered that the giant king Thrym was the thief. Thrym admitted he had hidden Mjolnir 8 leagues deep beneath the earth and declared he would only return it if the beautiful goddess Freya became his bride. Thor and Loki returned to Asgard with this demand. Of course, Freya refused to marry the coarse giant just to retrieve the hammer. She was so angry at the suggestion that the necklace around her neck snapped apart. The gods held a council to figure out how to get Mjolnir back. Heimdall, the wise god who could see the future, proposed a daring plan. Thor himself should disguise as the bride. Though Thor initially hated the idea, "The gods will call me womanish if I put on bridal linen," he grumbled. There was no other way. They dressed Thor in a bridal gown and veil, and Loki went along disguised as Thor's handmaid. Thor and Loki traveled to Thrym's hall in their disguises. The giant king was overjoyed, thinking Freya had finally come to be his wife. A great wedding feast was held to honor the bride. Thor nearly gave himself away at the feast by eating an entire ox and drinking many barrels of mead, which shocked the giants. Loki quickly excused Thor's bizarre appetite by saying the bride had not eaten for 8 days in her eagerness to come to Jotunheim. Thrym believed this explanation, and the feast went on. Finally, during the wedding ceremony, Thrym ordered that Mjolnir be brought out and placed on the bride's lap to bless the marriage. The moment the hammer was laid in Thor's lap, Thor grabbed its handle with his iron-gloved hand. In an instant, he threw off his bridal veil, revealing his furious eyes. With a mighty shout, Thor swung Mjolnir and struck down Thrym. The giant king and all his kin in the hall were smashed by the wrath of the thunder god. Thor thus reclaimed his cherished hammer. Loki and Thor returned to Asgard triumphant, and Thor laughed about how he, of all gods, had to wear a wedding dress to save the day. This story showed that Thor wasn't just a brute force. He could also play along with a crafty plan when it was needed, and he never lost his sense of humor even when the situation was absurd. Thor's battles with the giants were countless. He was their greatest bane. In one story, Thor battled the giant Hrungnir, who was made of stone. The two fought in a fearsome duel after Hrungnir threatened Asgard. Thor hurled Mjolnir at the giant, shattering Hrungnir's stone head into pieces. Although Thor was victorious, a fragment of the giant's whetstone weapon got lodged in Thor's forehead during the fight. Thor carried that small piece of stone in his head for the rest of his life, as a reminder of the fierce battle. In another tale, Thor encountered a crafty dwarf named Alvis, who wanted to marry Thor's daughter Thrud. Thor was not pleased with this suitor, but he didn't drive him off with violence. Instead, Thor challenged Alvis to a test of wisdom. He kept the dwarf talking all night long by asking him questions about the worlds and the gods, which Alvis was proud to answer. Alvis was so distracted by the contest of knowledge that he didn't notice the approach of dawn. When the first rays of the sun hit Alvis, the dwarf was turned to stone, for such is the fate of dwarves caught in daylight, thus preventing him from marrying Thrud. Through this clever ruse, Thor protected his daughter without lifting a weapon, using wit and patience in place of strength. Thor's greatest enemy was the world serpent, Jörmungandr. Thor had nearly lifted the serpent in Utgarda-Loki's hall. Thor encountered this serpent again on a famous fishing trip. Thor and the giant Hymir rowed out to sea in a boat, hoping to catch the largest creatures of the ocean. Thor took an ox's head as bait and put it on a fishing line. Dropping the line deep into the dark waters, he finally hooked Jörmungandr itself. The huge serpent rose up, and Thor pulled with all his might. He heaved the fishing line, and the sea foamed and churned as the serpent's head emerged, dripping and spewing venom. Thor grabbed Mjolnir, ready to smash the serpent's skull. It was a struggle of titans. The boat quaked and was close to capsizing. Hymir, the giant sitting at the other end of the boat, grew terrified of the serpent and of Thor's rage. Just as Thor was about to strike a killing blow, Hymir panicked and cut the fishing line with his knife. The great serpent plunged back into the sea and escaped. Enraged, Thor turned and struck Hymir, knocking the foolish giant overboard into the sea for ruining his chance to destroy the monster. This dramatic encounter ended with Thor disappointed that Jormungandr got away. The world serpent and the thunder god would not meet again until the final battle to come. Like all Norse gods, Thor's fate was tied to Ragnarok, the end of the world. Ragnarok was a prophesied cosmic battle in which the giants and monsters would attack the gods, leading to mutual destruction and the dawn of a new world. Thor bravely faced his destiny when that day arrived. During Ragnarok, Thor finally met Jormungandr for a last battle. Thor fought the colossal serpent with all his power. The clash between Thor and Jormungandr was so immense that mountains trembled and the earth split. In the end, Thor managed to kill the Midgard serpent with mighty blows from Mjolnir. However, the serpent had drenched Thor in its deadly venom during the fight. The giant snake's poison was so potent that Thor only walked 9 steps after slaying his foe before collapsing. Thor, the strongest of gods, fell dead from the serpent's venom, a hero till his last breath. This was a tragic end, but also a noble one. Thor died knowing he had destroyed the great evil beast. His sacrifice ensured that Jormungandr would not survive Ragnarok to harm the new world that would rise from the ashes. It is said that after Ragnarok, when a new earth emerges, Thor's young sons Magni and Modi survive and inherit their father's hammer Mjolnir. With Thor's weapon, they carry on their father's legacy of protection and help restore order and light to the world after the darkness of Ragnarok. Thor was not only a hero in myths, he was deeply worshipped by the Norse people in ancient times. In the Viking Age, around 790–1100 CE, Thor's popularity reached its peak. He was adored by warriors, farmers, and families alike as a protector and friend of mankind. In fact, during the era when Norse pagans were gradually encountering Christianity, many saw Thor as the greatest rival to the new Christian god. Even as some Norse folk began to accept Christianity, they did not forget Thor. Archaeologists have found many amulets shaped like Thor's hammer from the 9th and 10th centuries, suggesting that people wore these little Mjolnir pendants for protection and to honor Thor, especially when their traditional religion was under threat. Thor's worship eventually declined as Christianity became dominant by the 12th century, but his memory was never truly erased. Stories of Thor were written down in works like the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda by later poets in Iceland, ensuring that his deeds would be remembered by future generations. The very name Thursday comes from Thor's Day, reminding us of this god each week. In modern times, Thor remains widely known and celebrated. He appears in books, comics, and films, most famously as a superhero based on the thunder god in Marvel comic books and movies, keeping the spirit of the Norse Thor alive in popular culture. From ancient myth to the present day, the story of Thor, the brave, hammer-wielding defender of gods and humans, continues to inspire and entertain people around the world.